Hello, and welcome to another episode of Peek Behind the Curtain, the show where we go behind the scenes of the latest SMSU stage productions. Joining me here today are the stars of Wind in the Willows. It is Dominique McPhail and Taylor Benson. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Had a snow day, so I feel very well rested after spring break.
Snow day right after spring break.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than how we returned from spring break last year.
Oh my gosh, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
At least
could
we're
be,
back.
Yeah.
Could be so
we're back
much
on
worse.
campus.
Yep. Like I said, today we're going to be talking Wind in the Willows, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff you guys did with that and everything, as well as previewing some of the other upcoming shows you guys have got coming out here for the rest of the year. So let's just get into it. You guys did star in the show, but you also had some behind-the-scenes jobs. Do you mind telling us what else you did for the show?
Yeah, so my biggest area obviously was costumes for the show, making sure everyone had costumes for the show for their characters, different characters. And then I also was assigned the role of dance captain to help people like warm up before the show and just make sure dances were like nice and tight, helping Avi and Liz with just kind of cleaning things up.
Yeah, and my job was just to make sure that everybody could be seen on stage. I did the lights, so I made sure that no one was in the dark and that we were able to see their faces. So
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What were some of the ways you guys kind of balanced preparing your on-stage roles and then also having to do the behind-the-scenes stuff? Because one sounds like a challenge already, and then you add in a whole other.
I'll let Dominique go first on this one because I feel like I have a more interesting story about this.
Just for me, prepping, like a lot of it was I had to focus a lot on my roles on stage outside of rehearsal, like putting in that time to make sure that, you know, I kept up my stretching and I was running the dances and running the lines, because a lot of the times during rehearsals, I was running back up and adjusting lights last minute and making sure that everything was perfect. So that preparing was a little bit more outside of rehearsal for me, at least. And Taylor definitely probably had a little bit more of a challenge because hers was the whole rehearsal process.
Yeah.
She was working on it.
Yeah. So it was a huge challenge for me trying to balance it. I had just done Clue prior to with costumes. Wasn't in that show, so I had a little bit more of leeway with getting things done, and I had a little bit more time because I could work just right through rehearsal. I could not do that with the show. Obviously, I had to be at rehearsal, and if I wasn't at rehearsal, I was at work. So it was just very difficult for me at first to balance everything, really up until the last week, because there was just so many costumes for each character. Was still very, very, very new to the process. And like looking back now, there was about 100,000 things I would change about what I did and like the way I did it. But yeah, again, I had to focus on my character, like pretty much right outside of rehearsal. It would be at rehearsal as the character, like learning the dances, learning the scenes, or it would be right after rehearsal at like 11 p.m. when I couldn't be in the shop anymore. And then I would go over my lines and be like, all right, we can do this now because we have time. Or it would be like during an online class, even when it was getting down to crunch time.
We shouldn't admit it, but yeah. I mean, it was just finding the
Just
time.
don't mention the professors, and then they'll figure it out amongst themselves. Like, she was kind of spaced out that one day. I wonder if that was...
I would whip it out during an online class at like 9 a.m. and I'd be like, all right, crunch time, let's go. Or I'd even bring the script with me to work too, to look at it during some downtime. And that was very helpful because obviously I couldn't be in the costume shop during any of that time. So I was like, all right, this is my time to do this. Or even towards the end too, I was running lines with Liz while in the shop and working on my songs and my lines and everything else in the shop while I was working on the duck costumes.
To my knowledge, so this is your second go at costume design?
Yes.
And this was your first at lighting, if I'm correct?
Or
did you have some prior experience with that?
My first, I would consider this my first solo lighting design.
Okay.
I did lights for Clue as well, but I had quite a bit of help on that one as before. So, but yeah, this one was my first by myself, so.
This production involved a lot of dance numbers. So what sort of considerations did you, making costumes, was there anything specific you had to think of just from flexibility or anything like that sort of standpoint? Or
especially for the Wild Waters, the 9 of us who were in those Wild Water dances, we were pretty much the main dancing group of the show, the featured dancers, if you want to say in technical terms. I had to make sure we could move in the pants that I had. I had to make sure we didn't lose our pants in the middle of the show. Had to make sure we didn't lose our tails in the middle of the show. That was a big one for me. And then especially had to make sure, obviously, could like, had a lot of mobility in the pants, especially I hate to say, like, I hate to be like all about me, but especially during that last number when I had like a lot of like jumps off the table into the splits, ended in the splits, like all of that stuff. I had to make sure I did not rip the pants. And like that just goes for pretty much everyone too with the show, with the Wild Waters. I just had to make sure no one ripped their pants.
Yep. Because to everyone else, it's like the motivation is don't rip your pants, otherwise you're making it work for someone else and you feel bad. But for you, it's like, don't rip the pants because you do not have time to fix this today.
I had no time to run back to the shop. If someone ripped their pants, I would have been like, all right, Liz, safety pins, let's go. We'll deal with it later.
Get me all the safety pins.
Safety pins and duct tape. That's
and
what
you know what? We had the bucket of safety pins backstage for the tails, so we didn't have to run back to the shop to get the safety pins. So if worse came to worse, thank goodness it did not. But if it did, we would just easily fit in the safety pins.
You mentioned tails. I am actually kind of curious. I didn't necessarily need to go into this, but I just on my notes just have tails ? What sort of added challenges does that bring?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, making the tails, with the faux fur, coming from a costumer standpoint, working with faux fur is very difficult because it is a directional fabric, or like what's called a directional fabric. So you have to cut it a very certain way. Otherwise you're going to waste so much fabric, and you already do with faux furs just because of the way it is. So making the tails, I had to make sure we had enough fabric to do 3 to 6 tails for each. Made sure they were long enough to, be like, oh, this is a good proportion for this person. Thankfully, that was really easy to figure out. So that was like the least of my concern with the tails. And then just finding the right materials, honestly, in the shop. We had to buy, I think it was like 1 yard of fur to finish making up the tails for the Wild Waters because we didn't have quite enough to make them. But beyond that, we already had everything we needed. So it was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be, but just annoying.
Yeah. So I kind of want to go back to the same question now, kind of with the lighting design aspect. I would think one of the advantages for you is you now at least know the choreography. Does that help with the lighting design as far as placements of the light and everything?
Yeah, for sure. Because I know, unfortunately, for tech, we had a couple people missing due to like other prior commitments. So it was really helpful to like be in the show because I knew generally where they were going to stand. And it was small adjustments I had made when they get back. Whereas if I wasn't in the show, and Mary would have definitely helped me out too, but it's just so much easier because we know, oh, they're supposed to be center stage on this part. Okay, I can just slide this cue up and we're good to go.
Yep.
So it was definitely helpful.
So yeah, we don't necessarily have to get into the injury itself, but you did have a sort of a foot injury before. I'm going to show a little clip here, no audio.
Okay.
But I want to talk about 2 scenes in particular, the tap dancing scene, and let's just start there, I guess, actually, first. How?
A lot of tape. A lot of tape.
Me and Dominique were both like underneath our socks. We're just tape.
Yeah, it was a lot of tape. It was a lot of just smiling through the pain and trying to get through it. I am very much a firm believer in mind over matter. You just got to push through it. You got to get through the show, and the minute you get home, you can ice it. So,
how long did you have that injury? Like, how far into the rehearsal did you have that injury? Or
it was the first dress rehearsal, so that Monday.
Oh, wow!
We all got injured that night.
Yeah, so it was.
Night.
What injuries? What other injuries were there?
A lot of people just struggled with the choreography. It was a lot of like jumping and moving around. So it was ankles and knees that were really sore.
Yeah, and then us as a whole group just not really taking care of it because we didn't really know how to treat it fully. Both of mine were ankles. I fell on my knee on Monday, so I injured my knee, which was already injured. So that was super fun. And then I landed my jump wrong one night. The very first night of dress rehearsal, I landed on my toes. So I don't know what I did to them, but I just know I couldn't point my toes for a while.
We're just old and falling apart.
At night.
We're not as young. We can't move in certain ways anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely on stage. Couldn't even realize it. Maybe closing night when the injuries were just like for everyone just kind of at the peak. But the only time I noticed it on stage was maybe closing night. But even on stage for a majority of it, I didn't even realize it. And I'm speaking for myself here, but you know, again, it's that mind over matter thing. But then as soon as you get backstage, we had ice packs backstage for everyone who needed them. As soon as we were backstage, on the ground, on chairs, icing.
For those of you out there who don't consider this a sport or as competitive,
For real.
because you guys are talking about the story, it reminds me of when I was in high school. I think it was like junior or sophomore year. Like our quarterback in a playoff game, like broke his ankle in the first quarter.
Yeah.
He didn't realize it. He didn't know. You just don't know.
It's
it
the
at the time.
adrenaline.
Yeah.
You got to get through it.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing for me. I'm
Yeah.
here and there. But you also did a bit on stilts, if I'm not wrong.
I did. I did.
That's just, to me, that's impressive in general.
You fool.
I don't consider myself very athletic, but out of all the things I am not good at athletically, stilts and my balance would be so far on that.
It's definitely a challenge. I was terrified because the Piper was on the cast list. It was listed twice. So I asked our director, Mary, I was like, is there a mistake? She goes, nope, you're going to be acting out the Piper and Sarah's going to be singing. Also, I hope you're not afraid of heights because I'm going to put you on stilts. I went, oh, okay.
That's how a lot of conversations with Mary go. They're very chaotic, but it's so fun.
She has these crazy, wild ideas, and I love it. It was a crazy idea and terrifying at first, but it was super fun. Once
I think it helped that you started almost immediately on those stilts rather than like
as soon as Mike had them built, he wanted me up on them practicing every day. So
Can you imagine if you didn't do that till tech week?
Oh my gosh. Sometimes I would be in the shop at like 10 a.m. I'd see the black box store be open. It'd be like, you know, a Friday morning before classes started or after like my class was over because my class ends at 10. And I would see the black box store would be open. I was like, there's no classes in the black box today. What's happening? So I like walk through. Mike's not in the shop. I realize the stage door is open. I'm like, I might be outing you really quick, so I'm very sorry. But I just see Dominique on stage on her stilts alone, and I'm like,
it's just me.
Girl,
it's just me.
What happens if you like really hurt yourself?
Yeah, it was just me. I was in there practicing as much as I possibly could.
Yeah.
That's good.
It was nice though. It was very honorable. I personally, as someone who was in the show, not even like, you know, an actual choreographer, not even like as a director or anything like that, I really thought it was very honorable that you did that because that just kind of showed like your drive for it and it just made it so much better.
It was definitely a push. The very first time, I wish someone could have gotten it on recording because it was bad. Mike was our technical director, but he was holding me up the entire time. He was moving it. I was so focused on not falling. And it was a huge push for me because you could kind of see, he's like, I think you can do it, but he definitely was a little worried if I'd be able to do it in time. And so that was a really big push. I'm like, nope, I'm going to do this. And 2 days later, I was walking on my own. So
there we go. It's like riding a bike all over again. Don't let
I
go.
was thinking that. And then they let go without telling you, and you're like,
the betrayal.
Yes, that's what Colton had done. He helped me out during rehearsals, and he was a huge help, and he's amazing. But he saw I was ready before I did. And so he was holding me. I was to the point where I just needed it for the balance so I could walk. And all of a sudden he just lets go and takes a couple steps back. And I look down and I'm like, I'm walking. And he goes, you're walking.
And that sound means it is time to take a break from the conversation and take a little intermission here and talk about some of the upcoming productions you guys are working on. Coming up next on the horizon is An American House. Why don't you guys talk a little bit about that?
So basically, An American House is about
a house in America.
Directly quoted from Sheila, the director, I must say. But basically, it's about a house that was built in like the 1830s, 1840s, and it just follows the story of that house rather
Not
than
even the family.
Yeah, it's a very different concept from a normal play that you're used to, where it just follows one separate character or one separate family, whereas this show just follows the story of the house and all the different families that lived in, all the different times it went through. It goes through like Civil War. It goes through Y2K. It goes through like the moon landing. This is obviously not in order because Y2K was after the moon landing. But then it goes through like the invention of like computers, and then it goes right up until like modern times. Yeah.
Yesterday.
So
it's very unique.
It is very unique. It's a very, very beautiful show.
And I don't want to spoil the ending, but it is so bittersweet. And
it really
I'm
is.
in tears every single time.
It's really a
so
beautiful
amazing.
show. Yeah. And we were able to talk with the playwrights because Sheila knows them personally. They're very, very nice. They were able to give some really, really good insight on. We just started rehearsals a couple weeks ago. Obviously took a break for spring break, but we're back on it tomorrow night because we can't tonight because of our snow day. Campus is technically closed.
Our snow day after spring break.
Yes.
Welcome to
Yes.
Minnesota, everybody.
Honestly.
That's on our banner now, I think. Actually.
Yeah. And then should I talk about show dates?
Yeah, why don't you let us know when people can see that?
All right. So we open on April 8th. And then from April 8th to 10th, we have a 7:30 p.m. show. And then on the 11th, we also have a 2 p.m. show. Then we have that week off. And then we open back up again on the 16th through 17th, also at 7:30. And then close the show up on the 18th at 2 p.m. And all that's on the main stage theater at SMSU.
Yeah, something we've said a lot here. Get there early because
Yes.
it is still limited seating from my understanding. So
Yep.
you want to make sure you get a good spot.
Or just a spot.
Yeah, just a spot.
A spot.
I usually go to these things alone, so I don't have to worry about just get a spot. So I have friends. I didn't realize how loner that sounded. So
I go to these things alone.
To be fair, you're usually recording them now, so.
Except for Clue when I made you volunteer.
yeah, it was fun though. So kind of moving into costumes a little bit again. You guys, these last few especially, have had to adjust how you do certain things with it being COVID and everything.
Yes.
I noticed there was kind of sort of masks built into the costume. Was that an early idea, or did you guys come up with that at a certain point, or how? Tell me the genesis of how that came to be.
The entire process, after just coming off for Clue, where we didn't do masks because it was such a small cast, and only like a 70-minute show, not even a very, very short show. So I was like, okay, I made masks for them to wear backstage. Obviously, they weren't just like demasked the entire time. But Mary came to me very, very, very early on when we were still having production meetings, when Clue was still in production. And they were like, oh, I want them to be masked for the entire show if we can. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I was thinking the exact same thing with how big this cast is, how close you want us to be for dances and blocking and all that, and just how close we're going to be backstage because it is such a big cast. So I started looking up right away clear face masks because we wanted to see the actors' facial expressions. We wanted to be able to read their lips, all that stuff. And I came across a few. Then I learned the dances, realized we needed something almost like a face shield because the face masks I had seen up to that point had been like very just enclosed, a plastic square, just a normal face mask with a plastic square. And I'm like, those are going to fog up. We're not going to be able to breathe because it's plastic. You know, breathing through cloth and a medical face mask, extremely easy. Breathing through plastic, not so much. Especially after, very intense dances like we were doing. And I came across this one. I knew right away I didn't want a full face shield, at least not with the one that went across the forehead. I saw a couple ones that were attached to glasses, but then I'm like, I don't know about that. But I mean, like, last resort. And then I saw these ones. They looked better on the Amazon listing. I will say, always do a lot better on the Amazon listing.
Story of my life, am I right?
Agreed. But we saw these ones. It was like, a 3-pack for a good price. And it was just a half face shield, had that little foam across the nose thing, and then just hooked onto the ears like a normal mask. So we ordered them. They did take a while to get to the school. So we were like, I really hope these work, because if they don't work, we don't really have another option right now that
you
we
really
can
weren't
order.
gonna have time to find a new one.
Exactly. And if we were to find a new one, it would have to be like surgical masks that we take off on stage or paint over, which was, I think, at least my original idea. That was kind of bouncing back and forth with Liz right away. Like, as soon as we started was that, but then clear face masks. But they came, they worked for the most part. We did have a cast member who was unfortunately like allergic to either the foam, the plastic itself, the ear loops on there. So we had to kind of work around that. We ended up just letting them go on stage without the mask on, just because it was already so close. I just didn't want to keep giving them an allergic reaction to the mask or to different masks that we use, just because I know how horrible that can be. So it ended up being fine. They wore a mask backstage as soon as they went back. Not an issue.
Yep.
So and then we took them off for photo call because of the glare. But
yeah.
Other than that, I was very pleased to see that they did not fog up pretty much at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just from the times I saw it or saw the performance, you really couldn't notice them except for sometimes with the glare from the lights every once in a while. Yeah. But even that wasn't very noticeable.
Yeah,
I would say.
And honestly, that was completely unintentional. I realized about halfway through even dress rehearsal when we started using them, because as soon as we got them, obviously we started using them to get used to them, get used to how the sound went into them, because it was like just being in your own little air bubble. It was very weird. Very. But I didn't notice this until halfway through dress. The foam almost looked like whiskers. And even Sheila pointed that out to me when we were talking about the mask. And I was like, oh, that worked out perfectly.
It was a happy coincidence.
It really was, as Bob Ross says, a happy little accident.
We don't make mistakes. We make happy little accidents.
Exactly. And yeah, it was... they came with film on them, though, like obviously to protect the plastic from shipping so they didn't get scratches on them. Those fogged up very, very badly with the film on there. I took the film off of mine right away just to see what we would have to do to see if they did fog up without the film on there. And if they did, then we had a lot of time to figure out, well, not a lot of time, like 2 weeks to figure out what to do if they fogged. But that first night we had them, we were just singing. So, a lot of air going out, which was almost the perfect time to test them out. The one without the film on there did not fog up one bit. And I was like, you're kidding. This is the best thing ever. This worked out so well. I was very happy.
Do you think that's something you guys are going to kind of continue to imply here in the coming productions, do you think? Or
I know Sheila really wants to wear masks for American House if we can. I know she's been looking at a couple of clear masks. She obviously asked me how I felt about the clear masks, like coming from like both perspectives. And obviously I gave her honest feedback because like I had very mixed feelings about them just because of the way they were. Like, they were a hard piece of plastic on your face and the foam wasn't attached and all that. So, I think we are trying to figure out how to incorporate more clear masks into the performance so that way our actors and our backstage people and our entire crew are being safe and being protected from COVID-19, but also you can see the person's full face and, get the same effect that you would going to a live show before COVID.
Yeah. That is kind of what I liked about it, is because the few times I did see it, I was, of course you don't notice it at first, but then I kind of saw, I was like, wow, that's pretty clever. Like, because you don't really notice it, and then you kind of see it, and it's like, you guys are trying to be safe and everything as best you can, and it really kind of seemed like the best option. Yeah. Especially. So what was kind of one of your favorite costumes to make or work on? Do you have like a highlight, or even like if you want, I'll let you decide, favorite one or least favorite one?
Oh my gosh. Well, my favorite one has to be hands down Mr. Toad's costume. The way it worked out was just absolutely beautiful. I had pulled a larger green suit that was just, the actor playing Mr. Toad Colton was just being absolutely engulfed by the suit. So I was like, because I didn't know how big of a belly we were going to give him, because obviously me and Mary from the start wanted pads, like body padding for Mr. Toad to make him like look like a toad. Did not know how large we were going to go with that at first, so I grabbed a larger suit. That obviously wasn't going to work regardless of the big pads that were like how big of pads we're going to use. And then I grabbed, with the help of Sheila, I grabbed this like green tweed suit, fit perfectly. The pants were a little bit big, which was also perfect, because then Mary went out went into the back hallway and grabbed one of the stomach paddings, and it just fit perfectly. It looked so funny, but yet so like well put together, like Toad would be. It was just perfect. It was just absolutely beautiful. And then Liz obviously got him that amazing green wig, and then he had the barbershop quartet straw hat, and it was just, the way it came together was beautiful. And then his shoes, I loved that costume so much. I don't know if I have a least favorite costume, I'll be honest.
Oh, well, that's good.
Well, at first
She's sitting here stewing like, please don't be one of mine. Please don't be one of mine. Please don't be one of mine.
The funny thing is, I was probably going to say the Pipers because I did not know what the heck was going to happen with that. Or any of the human characters, like the clerk, the attendant, the innkeeper, the judge. Yep. Did not know what I was going to do for that because the entire show revolves around animals. I completely forgot about the human characters in the show. So I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're kind of just like,
what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So that was very hectic the last like week or so, just trying to get all those human characters all done. And it ended up being just, here, you take a skirt, you take some overalls that you can fit over your entire costume, including your tail. I think maybe not just one character as a whole is least favorite, just all the human characters.
Yep. It's funny you bring up the human characters. That's a good transition to kind of my next part I want to talk to you about is the multitude of characters you guys especially play. I think the first time I did notice that I was a human character, I think was the jail cell scene with you.
Yeah.
For a while there I was thinking like, so what animal is she? Like, is she an animal? And then I think as I was editing the recorded version, you watch it like 20 times at that point. I'm like, I don't think she's an animal.
No, I was a human in that one.
I was very confused during the read through too. I was like,
they kind of just throw from animals. They just throw a couple humans.
There's some human characters in there too.
Minute.
But let's talk about some of the multitude of characters you guys did here. So list off for people out there. What were some of the few you guys did?
Oh, there's so many. I don't even know if I'm going to remember all of them. But I played Wild Wooder. I was a ferret. I was a duck. I was a field mouse. I was Piper, attendant, Margaret, and judge. And I think that's all.
Pretty much half the characters in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a few. It was a few.
Yeah.
just a few. And then I played significantly less. I only played Chief Weasel because weasels are better. I played a field mouse. I was also a duck, and then a human, just in Mr. Toad's scene. But yeah.
So with that, I noticed a few quick costume changes. I think especially by you, there was one that I was like, holy cow, is that the same person?
She had a straight up 12-second change.
So talk about that, because I want to know a little bit more about that.
So both the beginning of Act 1 and Act 2, I was character after character after character. And so for Act 2, my Piper costume was essentially my attendant costume. And then so I was able to get off the stilts from Piper, throw on my Margaret costume, go on as Margaret, and then Colton, I think, had like 5 lines, and then I was supposed to be back on. So it was unbuttoning a shirt and taking my skirt down and just praying that I could make that time, because it was very...
I tried to make it
quick.
as easy as possible.
It was as easy, I think, as it could have gone.
Yeah, exactly, without you,
I think
looking the same exact way that Margaret did.
So, and it was definitely helpful because Avi was a stagehand and she was phenomenal. She was right there, like unclipping antlers and throwing shirts on me. So it was definitely nice to have that help.
I've probably used this metaphor before on this show, but I picture like a NASCAR pit crew.
Yes, that's what
I watch a lot of NASCAR.
I think
so
you
my
used
best
that one too at the Anna Green Gables.
I probably did.
It's essentially what it is.
It pretty much is.
You get off stage
and
you have like 3 people undressing you and
you're
another
just standing
2.
there like, oh.
You're like you're getting your props ready as they're getting you dressed. So.
I can't help if I use the same metaphor. I just watch NASCAR a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, it's a good metaphor. Yeah. It's exactly what it's like.
Because I do think the first time I watched it, I saw you go off stage and I thought I saw you come back. I'm like, is that the same person, or is it just they just doing similar accents here? Because that was impressive. Did you have a favorite one out of all the little side characters you guys did?
That's me.
I always like the field mice.
Yes,
those were kind of funny.
I struggle between 2 characters that would be like my favorite, because the field mice, I think, were just so
cute.
Different than everyone else. They didn't speak a whole lot. It was yes and Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol.
Yes, and so it was just really fun. But you had a lot of freedom to interact with the other characters, and it was just so nice to be different than the sinister and evil Wild Wooders. That
very big contrast.
Yes, it was very, very big. So I really liked those, and then. Probably predictable, but my Piper, I absolutely love that character just because of like the work that I had put into it.
Yeah, so this is the character you were on the stilts for.
Yes,
correct?
yes. Yep. And it was very much I felt that I wanted to make everyone proud because Mary she's like, you're amazing and you've got this. And so I really wanted to be like, I can do this. I got this. So it was kind of showing myself and everyone else that I could do it as well. So it was definitely a team effort in it as well. Sarah was phenomenal because she was the Piper's singing voice. And I truly could not have done it on my own singing and on the stills. Yeah. That would have been a huge challenge.
It'd probably been dangerous too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danger. What do you mean?
You're trying to sing like in between each note, so you're like, and then just like concentrating.
Yeah.
Just
I had a couple lines actually that I was supposed to say on the stilts.
Oh my gosh.
It was a couple of the narrator lines that, everyone had. It was like popcorn effect.
Yeah.
And after I had gotten hurt that Monday, I was so focused on not doing any of that again. So I would just blank on my lines. Like I'd be so focused and then I'm like, oh, that's my line. So luckily there was a couple actors who were like, we can take your lines and say them backstage. And, and I was so grateful for that. I was like, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Going back to the field mice thing, I think my personal favorite part about the field mice is just messing with Bryn, who played Rat. Because my field mouse character entered first, so I would just sprint on stage on my little knees. Definitely bruised after that show.
Yeah.
Even, it was painful.
It was worth it.
Sprint, and as soon as we got to dress rehearsal week, when I started getting more comfortable in my character with costumes on, especially, I would start jumping on my knees to go greet her because of how excited I was.
Yeah.
And then she would walk behind me to go get drinks for us and help Otter with the drinks. And then I would we came up with this backstage too. I would grab her tail.
We were constantly grabbing tails backstage.
Because as a field mouse, I was like, oh my gosh, a rat tail. Yours is like mine, just bigger. And then she would whip it away. And then when I came in during the very final scene as a field mouse again, she would hand me her tail before I went underneath the table.
I think that was probably one of my favorite things is Colton's little improv line in the end. Where
under the table works as well.
I love that line.
I had asked Mary.
We have chairs, but under the table's fine.
I asked Mary and I was like, is it okay if the field mice go under the table? And she goes, I'd love that.
Me and Johnny were like, please.
So we went under and Colton's like, oh, I mean, we have chairs, but okay.
Yeah, it was so funny.
It's so cute.
Speaking of under the table, the first original thought for that fight scene at the very end after No Tears was...
I was actually going to ask about the fight scene because I was curious about that. But
the four main, so Badger, who was played by Dimitri, Bryn, Colton, and
Joy.
Mole, who was played by Joy, were all supposed to be underneath the table during the entirety of No Tears. So as I'm dancing up on that table, they're just all below, just hoping and praying that the table did not break. And then we brought up the table, realized it was very small underneath, realized that...
Joy might have been able to fit.
I was going to say, we could barely fit underneath it. And, I'm a very small human. And I was like, I'm not able to fit underneath here. Dimitri has no chance. No chance.
And that's going to do it for us here on Peek Behind the Curtain. The SMSU Theater Department has one more large stage show here to finish the year off in American House. Do you guys just want to once again kind of reiterate the show times for that, when people can kind of check that out?
Yeah, pulled up the stage or the show dates on my phone again. April 8th through 10th at 7:30 p.m., April 11th at 2 p.m., and then April 16th through 17th at 7:30 p.m. again. And then we close out on April 18th at 2 p.m.
Yeah, so once again, you're going to make sure you get there early, get a good spot, bring a couple friends that you have and definitely didn't make up from earlier.
Oh, no.
And just go ahead and enjoy a good show. Like it's a transcending time you kind of mentioned before. I really like that. I like the fact that it's going to be interesting new characters each time, so it'll keep the show fresh.
Yes.
So that's something to look forward to. Also, just going to keep your eye out for any improv shows these guys do at the end of the year. They're always a great show to go to.
And they're free.
You get to laugh for free, people.
Hopefully they'll laugh.
Yeah.
I will
last
say,
show we did was pretty good.
Yeah. I can't remember what the joke was, but me and my buddy Mitch went to the improv show and he started laughing at something. And you know that level of laughter you get that kind of makes other people laugh?
Yeah.
Well, then it started making me laugh, and it was a feedback loop of laughing We were laughing at that joke for 2 minutes longer than
Was it
everyone
just
else.
this past show?
It was this past show.
It was
I think.
probably something to do with like the car. Like, what's the worst time to get your car towed?
I don't know if it was that bit, but
Or
it was.
all of
It was a
the
line
jokes.
Brady said. I can't remember what the
of
line
course it
was. But he just started laughing, and then I started laughing, and then he just laughed more at my laughing, and I swear everyone around us was probably annoyed at us, but
I ended up laughing because
I think I also ended up laughing.
the thing they go feet, 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 and you walk
Oh,
in,
yeah,
and
that's our thing.
And so they're yelling feet at me, and all of a sudden Brady goes foot. I just lost it backstage. I was like, yeah.
Brady just really has the best comedic timing of our
Yes.
group, I swear.
So yeah, you're going to want to keep your eye out for those shows as well. For myself, Taylor, and Dominique, we'd like to thank you so much for watching and taking a peek behind the curtain with us.